Alvina, historically, wealth planning has centered around life events like weddings and funerals. But what are some of the quieter or less known transitions which people should think about when it comes to estate and wealth planning?
Sure. Well, certainly we still plan for those life events, but as you said, it's the quieter events that is a little more difficult to plan for because, well, they're not obvious, right? So the way I think about it, I kind of think about it in three different categories. The first is thinking about planning for the next generation down. Not necessarily the obvious one like the birth of a child or a wedding, but really when you see your young adult children kind of switching their identity, when they become financially aware and more importantly, become financially independent. So for example, when your child has their first paycheck, maybe from a summer job, sitting down with them and going through the paycheck and saying, okay, this is tax withholding, maybe talk about putting the money into a Roth IRA so that you can have that conversation about investments and going forward about retirement. The second I see is the generation up, planning for parents, but not when they're at the point where they're sick or, about to pass, but early on when they are healthy and they are mentally so sharp. So you could talk to them about their asset, get an inventory of the asset, what are the succession plan for them may be. And then the last one I would say is the moments that did not happen, right? So perhaps you're not married, but you're not planning to, but you have a lifelong partner, right? So how do you plan for that partner when you're gone? The marriage that didn't happen. And then the other one that we typically see when we work with our clients who are business owner is the business sale that didn't happen. Perhaps you own a business and you never plan to sell it. You're going to work till the day you die. You want to leave it to your children. You still have to plan for that.
Which of these less highly visible transitions is the most complex when it comes to financial planning?
Oh, goodness. I mean, they all have complexity in their different ways. I would say that, to me, two things sticks out. One is all the good intentions that a parent often have on all of these, but they're not being intentional or transparent about it. So for example, helping out an older sibling to buy a home, right? It's very quiet. We kind of write them the check or help them with a loan. And yet years later, maybe your second child said, well, mom and dad didn't help me with this, right? Same thing with charity. A lot of people very quietly sign a pledge to support their university or their favorite cause, but they don't share that with their children. So then it ends up having a unintended surprise at the end.
What about the use of trusts when life circumstances shift? Trusts have become increasingly popular, not just for the super wealthy, where you hear about them, but for everyday Americans as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So look, I started practicing law as a trust and estates lawyer 20 years ago before I moved into wealth management. And I would say the type of trust we see and the complexity we see is so different now than 20 years ago. And what I've noticed in the trust industry is that there's a recognition of the complexity of wealth and the flexibility you need. So one of the biggest things I've seen is the bifurcation of the trustee role. So historically, a trustee does three things. They do investment management of the assets, they do distribution decision of the assets, and they do administration of the assets. I think with modern families, all the complexity that we talk about, there's a recognition that one person can't possibly be good for everything. And so what's happened in a lot of trust structure we see today is a bifurcation of those roles such that you have one different person or institution doing each. So typically what we're seeing nowadays, Greg, is that you have a family member who's a distribution trustee because they know the family well, they know how to use the money for the benefit of the kids. However, when it comes to investments and administration decision, they really do prefer an institution like a wealth management shop to help them.
And then finally, the one big life event that we keep hearing about is this massive great wealth transfer from the boomers on down, over $120 trillion, or however much money they're talking about coming down from the older generations to younger ones. So what are they doing over at BNY to prepare for this? What are the advisors saying? What are they doing?
Yeah, we've actually been at this for a long time because we keep hearing about this, right? It's already happening. So I would say, in addition to what we've been doing all along, which is helping to educate and inform the next generation, we're actually doing it. Having the next generation have a seat at the table so that it's more than just information and learning, but actually active doing trial and error. So with a lot of our clients, they actually request for us to have their children be involved with our investment decision meetings. So it's not like they necessarily have a vote, but the fact that they're involved have some teeth in game, so to speak, has really helped.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on and talking about it.
Thank you so much.